Morning, everyone. If you all find a seat, if you would like one, there's a few here in the front, I think. Thank you very much for coming out today, even in the rain. It's going to be a very interesting program this morning, and let me just get it off to a rapid start with introducing Chancellor Robert Birgeneau.
Well, I don't have to tell all of you that today's a very special day for cosmology at UC Berkeley as we celebrate the launch of the Berkeley Center for Cosmological Physics. Of course, I think all of you know that this center is built upon the remarkable accomplishments of our colleague George Smoot and his collaborators, and its formation was catalyzed by his award with collaborator John Mather, another product of UC Berkeley, of the Nobel Prize in Physics 1 year ago. We all remember that really joyous occasion. And I remember within sort of 24 hours, George Smoot coming to me and saying he had this vision for this Center for Cosmological Physics, and we had to establish it the next day. And I apologize, George. It took 1 whole year, but here we are. All of you know that we have a remarkable faculty and find ourselves in so many ways in the golden age of astrophysics and cosmology here on campus. And I remember not so long ago when I'd spend my time with colleagues doing atomic physics, measuring things to 9 decimal places, and then walking down the hallway and talking to my friends doing cosmology, where at that time, if they got within an order of magnitude, this was an incredible breakthrough. And it's really, I have to say, genuinely, speaking as a physicist, genuinely impressive at the progress that's been made through quantitative measurements in the last decade in terms of refining the parameters that define the nature of our universe. And it's really just absolutely astounding evolution, and clearly one of the great results of 20, and we now will see 21st century physics. In addition, of course, there's been great work done by many people here at Berkeley. We have a phenomenal effort both in physics and in astronomy, in astrophysics and cosmology, and I look out and I see some of the world leaders out here. And I was going to start naming people, but I'll miss someone. So I'm going to apologize to all of you out there for not naming you explicitly. But I will remind us both of George Smoot's work and this phenomenal work that Saul Perlmutter and all of his colleagues did, leading to the discovery of dark energy, which won Saul specifically the Shaw Prize and then the Gruber Prize. And I think the Gruber Prize actually, if I remember correctly, recognized all the collaborators, right, including, I see Alex out here and others as well. I also want especially to acknowledge the partnership with Lawrence Berkeley Lab and to recognize both Steve Chu and Jim Segrist for their efforts on this. This is actually my second press conference in 2 days. You may have seen in this morning's newspaper that yesterday we had a press conference on the establishment of the East Bay Green Corridor with the 4 mayors, the surrounding communities, and Steve Chu and myself. And that's another area where the partnership in alternative energy research between the lab and the campus has really generated just incredible scientific efforts that would not have been possible for either the lab or the university separately. Over the last year for the center, we've built the funding foundation for the center, and so far $8.1 million has been secured. Our first supporter was George Smoot himself, who donated $500,000 of his Nobel Prize money to the center. And George Breslauer, the provost, who's here, and I agreed to match George's contribution with a second $500,000 to kick it off. Also, Saul Perlmutter will use a portion of his Gruber Cosmology Prize to seed a fund for future research that, with the addition of other funds, will total approximately $600,000. So if you're adding, we're up to $1.6 million. And we hope to raise an additional $4 to $5 million to permanently endow many of the center's activities. But we also have 2 other significant donors, or several others that we want to honor. Judy Webb, UC Berkeley trustee, who established a chair for the center. One of the things I'm personally proud of, because I met with this couple several times in New York, Tom and Allison Schneider, who have stated and given us permission to state it publicly their intent to establish a Hewlett Chair in physics with a preference for cosmology. So this will be one of the first Hewlett Chairs is going to be dedicated to the research in the center, and that's a $2 million permanent endowment to support research, graduate student fellowship, and faculty salaries. Very notably, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation recently awarded a vitally important 3-year grant to the center of $1.5 million, which will help the center establish itself. And I want to thank Jim Omura and David Kingsbury of the Moore Foundation, who, let's see, one of Jim, right, is here with us today. So obviously this is to really establish a very firm, both financial, but then obviously also intellectual foundation for this great new endeavor. And so it's now my pleasure to call on George Smoot, the 2006 Nobel laureate in physics, who will be the director of the Center for Cosmological Physics. George.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. But more than that, I have a couple duties. The first is I want to thank all the people who are making this possible. It's clear all I did was have a vision and state what I wanted to do. In fact, there's been a tremendous number of people who've done a tremendous amount of work to make this happen. Both the incredible faculty and staff that are here are doing really outstanding research over many years. The staff who help us put everything together, including even making this arrangement, and just a huge number of other people and the students. And so that the donors are absolutely critical in that, and the Chancellor thanked them. That's the job of a Chancellor, to be thanking the donors, also of our deans. And but I feel a great amount of gratitude that people recognize this kind of work as outstanding and worth doing, and are willing to fund it with their own money. And I appreciated Judy Webb particularly, and she came with us and helped to keep my family organized and so forth. So thank you very much, Judy, and hopefully you enjoyed Sweden very much. And I also, have really the warmest regard for the Moore Foundation, and hope we continue a good relationship between Berkeley and the Moore Foundation in the future. So anyway, I want to get back and talk about the science, because the vision and the interest of this has been driven by the science over the years and about what's going on. And so why did I think it was appropriate to establish a center? And there sort of comes down to two questions: why now and why here? And the answer to why now was hinted at by Chancellor Birgeneau, which is when I started in cosmology, too many years ago to mention, we were lucky to get things right to within an order of magnitude or 50%. And just over a decade ago, we launched an era which I label the beginning of precision cosmology, which we're now beginning to achieve. We're getting to the point where we can actually, make observations of the universe and get those correct down to sort of the percent level. At least we hope to proceed that way in the next couple of years. Next 4 to 5 years, be at that level. But do it in a way that allows us to assure not only are we being precise, but we're being accurate, in the sense that, there used to be a phrase about cosmologists, they're never in doubt, but they're often in error, right? and I used to say, astronomy is the only science that I know of where the errors get names, right? They name the errors after people rather than the effects. But times are changing, and we've reached the point where we now have a description of the universe, which when you first look at it seems fantastic, but when you realize we can go out and make observations at various epochs and compare our observations to this simple model, we're able to see they're in tremendously good agreement, and we're entering the era in which we're trying to probe deeper and look for the small disagreements so that we can begin to understand what the dynamics and the physics are that follow underneath that. And that is, when we come into that era, there's two different things that happen. We now have to combine the results from many different experiments, which means we need a group of people who have the background and the knowledge. So this will lead to why here, which is in Berkeley. And why now is because we've got to the point where you need a group of people who have knowledge from many different areas that can apply look at the observations, look at the data analysis, look and understand it, understand the physical processes that are going on, what might be happening, and see if we're explaining everything and we're knowing what's going on, and we're cross-checking so that we're not only getting the precise numbers on fitting parameters, but we're seeing if we're understanding the underlying physics of the underlying processes. And sometimes that requires us to know astrophysics, sometimes it requires us to know cosmology, sometimes it requires us just to know instrumentation and experiments, sometimes it's computing. We need all those different skills, and that is something that's unique about Berkeley is we have tremendously good faculty and staff, plus tremendous facilities here that allow us to attack these kind of problems in a coherent way. And the reason you create a center rather than doing individual research is because you need the group intellect, the teamwork of attacking these kinds of problems. So that's the why now and the beginning of why here, but I wanted to say a little bit more before I mentioned some of the people here and what's going on, because I'm worried about following the same track as Bob. There's so many people here doing great work that to try and name them all individually, you'll certainly forget somebody and see that. But one of the things that we can do in the center, we've already started doing at the center, is prepare for the future. That is, we have to think about not only attacking these problems, but how we're going to raise the next generation of people who are going to go the next step and do that. And we've already started on that issue. The first thing is we already have hired in 3 postdocs for the center. The first of these is Oliver Zahn. So we search worldwide, and unfortunately he has an immigration interview this morning, so he couldn't be here. but hopefully he'll make it here at the very end, or you guys will have to meet him otherwise. But he's very tall and has his head shaved. But he's very fun to be around, and he's already had an impact. He's just only been here a short time, but he's already an impact. The second person that came is Anase Slozar. So Anase, show him who you are. And next to him is Alexei Lothold. And so these are the first 3 of the postdocs that we've hired in directly to be in the center to begin with. And we have an active search going on right now where we have more than 100 applicants. Many of them appear to be extremely well qualified. And we're hoping that we'll hire 2 or 3 of those, of the very best of those, to come here. And we do a worldwide search. You might have noticed these people's names. That we're discriminating against U.S. citizens. We in fact just take whoever the best people we can have, but we happen to have to pick some that have some immigration issues. But that's one of the issues. That's one of the things that you do when you're doing science. You try and do the best you can, and we actually are collaborating worldwide. And so we'll have an example of that with our deputy directors. So we have deputy directors Chengpei Ma, right, and Hitoshi Maruyama, and Elliot, yes, sorry, and Elliot Carteret. These are our associate directors, and Bob was, giving me kudos for saying everyone in the center is a deputy director or higher. That's not quite true, although we do have an executive committee that has, say, Martin White on it, and Bernard Satterley, and Jim Segrist, various people on it. So pretty much it's true, but it's not that we don't actually have responsibilities and other things that we have a lot of people doing. And we even have a second deputy director, Eric Lindner, who is running the LBL side of the thing. Eric, would you raise your hand? Yes. So you can see. So we already are developing quite a large infrastructure, and we're trying to put together a set of people who are coordinating the kind of activities, but give everybody a great degree of freedom. You might notice the sort of openness in which we started this meeting. And we have people in charge of various things. I see even Raphael dressed up in a coat and a tie, so I want to acknowledge he's in charge of one of the groups, but he's also in charge of arguing with me about whether the existence of man in the universe makes a difference or not. And so we have a lot of different and exciting activities, and we're thinking both in terms of how we're going to attack this problem of explaining where the universe came from and where it's going and how it's developing, but also how to develop the next generation. That is the education aspects and the training aspects, as well as the outreach to the public. We think it's very important to carry this exciting research out to the public. It's both because the public really is interested and wants to know. But second of all, that's the way we attract exciting new people into the sciences and technical fields. And so the center not only is doing this research, but we're doing it at Berkeley because we have a lot of the unique ingredients, the national laboratory facilities that let us do instrumentation, let us do the computation that we need to do, has the expertise that we will, the academic situation, the ability for us to pull in postdocs and to recruit the students that we're doing now. Those are all the things that make it so this is a unique environment for us to really be able to press forward. And so I say we really have a challenge, which is we have a universe we can observe and describe. Now we really want to understand how it works and understand it in a much different way than we do now, in a much more confident way. And that's what we're trying to do with the center and carry that information to the public. And Berkeley has for long been a center of a place developing cosmology research. So it's not only my research and our sculpture over there of, the mechanical model for the DMRs that flew on the COBE satellite that detected the anisotropies, but we've also been pioneers in a lot of fields. One of those fields led to the discovery of the accelerating universe, and so you heard that Saul started out long ago, developing the ideas and developing it and making people recognize what it would be, and then soon there were two competing teams. Alex Filippenko is a member of the competing team and the same team part of the time, and it's just, collaboration, competition that kind of goes on simultaneously. And it leads us to these other exciting ideas, the things that we don't know about that we know we want to pursue. And so I'll let Saul talk to you about some of the challenges that he sees and how excited we are to try and move forward at the center, but also with the projects we're doing.
Well, let's see. I was actually going to just say a few words perhaps as one of the members, faculty members of the center down in the trenches. I think I may be one of the few that doesn't have one of the titles. And but give a feel for why it is that for all of us who are working in this area, a center is such an important part of our research world at a time like this. And I think there's just a couple of points I want to make. One was that we're living in a very exciting time, as you've been hearing, in terms of the issues and questions that we can ask about in cosmology that we've always wished we could ask, and now we actually have the opportunity to start getting at it. But things are moving very fast, and I think it's a time in which you really want some flexibility and the ability to try out ideas. I think part of the reason that George was able to do the early work that he did, I know some of the reason I was able to do the work I did was because there was seed money available during that period that allowed young people to try out something which otherwise would have been very difficult to start. And I think that's something that a center can really offer. That's a little bit unusual. And we can describe it in some sense. I think Berkeley has been good at having skunk works, running in subterranean for a while, trying out ideas, and then they often blossomed into things that became something that the whole world of cosmology and astrophysics was using. The other point that was something that George had begun mentioning was the fact that to get at some of these questions now, we really have to bring together many different approaches all simultaneously. And I think the particular movie that's being shown here on the side, which is the one example of this, is the satellite experiment that many people here at Berkeley are working on, which is going to use, in this case, at least 3 or 4 methods to get at the question of dark energy. And of course, this is one of the competing projects that we hope we'll know in about a year from now whether we are going to do this one. But it's only emblematic of the many other projects that you need to bring together to address such difficult questions as what is the dark energy that may be accelerating the universe. I think that what you need, therefore, is people who have expertise in each of the different experimental areas, and that's something that Berkeley is famous for. I think many of these techniques that are in play here are ones that were developed and or invented here at Berkeley. And you also need the glue of the theorists and the phenomenologists who can help tie it all together. And that's also something that Berkeley, I think, has been famous for. I don't know if Bernard Sadler is here, but there he is. But he had led the Center for Particle Astrophysics for the 11 years that it ran here at Berkeley, and I think Berkeley became a real shining example and through that work of how you can tie together various approaches to a problem and use the glue of the theory and the phenomenologists to push the whole field forward. And I hope if we now with this center get a chance to replicate any of that in this next coming decade, it will be a great success. So I think just from the perspective of somebody who's part of this as a faculty member, I think we're very excited to have this possibility of bringing together these elements in a center again. So I should turn it then to Dean Mark Richards.
Thanks, Saul. I'm Mark Richards. I'm the Dean for Mathematical and Physical Sciences in the College of Letters and Science. And this, of course, is a great day, and I'm the only non-physicist. Well, I'm a geophysicist. I'm kind of a physicist, but on the rostrum here. So I'm not going to talk so much about the physics, but I do want to say a few words about how all this came about. First of all, about gratitude and generosity. I don't know how many of you, if somebody taps you on the shoulder tomorrow morning and tells you that you've won a Nobel Prize, the first thought in your head is, I'm going to give most of this back to my colleagues and start a new center of intellectual activity. Maybe you would all do that. I hope it's a good precedent here at Berkeley. We want many more Nobel Prizes. But George, I just want to thank you sincerely from all of us. You really made this happen. We always needed something like this, but we've been talking about it for a long time, and it happened in a very short time after your extraordinary act of generosity. So thank you so much, George. Others have been mentioned as well. Of course, Judy Webb, thank you so much for not only your gift, but your interest and enthusiasm. Tom Schneider, who is not here, and many others. I also want to say a few special words about the Moore Foundation gift, because it's actually quite an extraordinary investment and vote of confidence in what we do here at UC Berkeley. This gift is not an endowment. It basically provides the full operating budget for the center for the next 3 years while we raise the rest of the endowment. Of course, our ambitions for the endowment keep growing every day, which is a good thing. Jim Amora shepherded this process for us and has both he and the Moore Foundation have provided quite a lot of support for astrophysics broadly at Berkeley over the years. This particular investment is extraordinary because it shows a certain faith in what we do best here at Berkeley, which is we educate and inspire young people, and we nurture and filter their brilliant ideas. And the two gentlemen sitting here, when they had less gray hair and more hair, were actually young themselves, and the Nobel Prize winning work and perhaps future Nobel Prize winning work actually was germinated when they were quite young scientists, both at Berkeley, at Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory. This kind of tradition of kind of, as Saul said, seed funding and nurturing young ideas and giving people kind of room to fail as well as succeed is becoming increasingly rare in the nature of funding across all sciences and engineering. And so this gift from the Moore Foundation is not only, in my opinion, extraordinarily wise, but is an extraordinary vote of confidence in what we do very well, what we think we do very well here. So thank you, Jim. Thank you to Gordon and Betty Moore and to the Foundation for your continuing support. And we hope we can live up to your expectations. The second thing I want to mention is that ultimately this center really is about young people. You are standing among giants here in the field of astrophysics and cosmological physics, both in the physics department and in astronomy. But in many ways, these are people whose reputations are quite secure, and I lose a lot of sleep at night making sure that they don't take the many job offers that they get almost on a daily basis to go to other places. But the thing that makes Berkeley so extraordinary and keeps us all here, I think, is the youthful energy. Our students, our undergraduate students, our graduate students, our postdocs, and this center is really pretty much focused on, again, nurturing those ideas and nurturing those new careers and keeping this place as kind of the bubbling cauldron of ideas that it has been really for the last couple of decades. The last thing I want to mention that perhaps is not so obvious to non-cosmologists is that cosmology is about a lot besides cosmology. It has gone from being a somewhat obscure and arcane science, as Bob Birgeneau mentioned, that dealt in order of magnitude guesstimates, to a very precise science that really involves all of theoretical physics, experimental physics, from condensed matter physics detectors to large-scale experiments in space and on ground-based instruments, and has become quite an integrative science. And so the benefit of this Cosmology Center to the campus and to physics and astronomy is much broader than just cosmology. I should point out that we're having this press conference in the Center for Theoretical Physics. And as these ideas and goals have evolved at UC Berkeley, people and groups have grown together, not grown apart. And of course, cosmology, basically being the science of everything, should of course be an integrative science. So thank you again to all the generosity that's on display here today, and congratulations to all the scientists and visionary leaders we have here at Berkeley. I think at this point we are ready to field questions, first from the press and then from anybody else. I suppose I can stand up here and be referee, but I expect you'll want to be directing your questions to the specialists. Okay, now this isn't one of those cases where I came loaded with a question myself, but we do have members of the press here. Have we explained this with such clarity that there are no questions? Okay. Well, in that case, I just want to point out that there are many people besides those up here at the front table to whom you may address questions informally. And unless Marie Feld or Bob Sanders tells me that I'm not supposed to end the formal part of this, I think I will bring this to a close. Thank you all very much.